everyone, welcome back to Hysterrified Podcast, a horror movie review podcast. I'm Paola.
And I'm Danielle.
And today, we are not in our usual setting. We're filming in the daytime because we aren't able to film at night, which kind of sucks because we like the spooky vibes at night, but we're going to make it work today. We're talking about the new James Wan movie called Malignant. I believe it's still in theaters, but we watched it on HBO Max, so you can watch it there as well. So Malignant is a 2021 American horror film directed by James Wan from a screenplay by Akila Cooper based on an original story by Wan, Ingrid Bisu, and Cooper. The film stars Annabelle Wallis, Maddie Hassan, George Young, Nicole Brianna White, and Jacqueline McKenzie. But before I read you the synopsis, we as always want to let you know
that there's going to be spoilers. This is not spoiler free, so if you have not seen the movie yet, and you don't want it to be spoiled, go watch it in the theater or on your TV on your couch in your house.
Yes. So now I'm going to read you just a tiny plot synopsis. Paralyzed by fear from shocking visions, a woman's torment worsens as she discovers her waking dreams are terrifying realities. Dun dun dun. So, what were your thoughts?
The opening credits look like a TV show. Specifically, they looked like how they did Fear Street or how they do American Horror Story.
Yeah, I wrote that down in my notes too. I feel like it was kind of strange. It was like they did kind of like a cold open of a show, or in this case a movie, and then they went into like a little intro sequence, which I feel like is rare for movies nowadays to have intro sequences like that, but
yeah,
I don't know. Yeah, it was a little strange, but I noticed that as well. That's what literally like my first bullet. This movie also takes place in Seattle, which apparently is like the ideal setting for horror movies or something, because The Ring took place in Seattle too, and so did Twilight. That's not really a horror movie, but it's like, you know, paranormal or something adjacent, because it's got vampires and whatnot.
Yeah.
But yeah, apparently, maybe it's because it's so like gloomy or something that makes it a good setting.
When I saw the trailer for the movie, it reminded me of The Ring, and after seeing the movie, it still kind of reminds me of The Ring. And because you said like it's in Seattle, has a girl who was adopted and tested on at some like psych facility.
Yeah. There's
psychic powers, and watching old like VHS tapes of like the doctor-patient sessions.
Yeah.
So it's got some
a lot of similarities, yeah. Also the phone thing.
The phone thing, yes. I can't believe I forgot to write that.
Which, like, still doesn't make sense. Even in this movie, like, I don't know how many years later. But, yeah, they use the phone thing as well for, like, the demon or the big bad, whatever it is, to communicate through the phone, which is just kind of funny, but...
And then, was the facility in The Ring also on the side of a cliff? I think it was, right?
I don't really remember, but I wouldn't be surprised.
Okay. I think that the facility was also on the side of the cliff. And when the sister was driving to the facility in Malignant, there was a part where it was like showing her face and then like the water in the background, and it was like blue.
Yeah.
It had that blue thing going on, and I was like, oh, really? Okay. Okay. So,
yeah, I mean, I think in general it seems like James Wan, like his style reminds me a lot of like horror movies in like the early 2000s. Obviously with like a different twist, but the like visuals and the aesthetics are very similar. So I noticed a lot of the signature like James Wan like zoom in, pan out shots, specifically of the house that the main character lived in. We watched a little like short. I think it was just a YouTube video, right?
I think so.
About the Conjuring and like how James Wan uses like certain techniques in his movies, and I feel like ever since we watched that video, it's like very clear to me now, like when those things pop in in other movies, like other horror movies in general, but also other like horror movies that he's directed, because it's like very specific. It's a really cool technique. I don't think like he invented it or anything, but he tends to use it a lot in his movies. So.
I actually didn't notice it as much. I feel like it was more subtle, I guess. Maybe I just wasn't.
They mainly used it in like the establishing shots of the house, which was also like a haunted looking house.
Yeah. So when I was looking up things about this movie, I found a fun fact, whatever, that back in 2012, James Wan released a graphic novel called Malignant Man, and it was about a guy who they thought he had cancer, but it turned out he had a parasitic alien inside of him, and that it gave him powers.
Interesting.
And then it said in the fun facts, like, oh, he released a statement that this is not connected to that graphic novel. But it sounds like you took the premise and just tweaked it a little bit.
Yeah, and he was one of the writers, you know, he didn't write it all by himself. I also found out that the other screenwriter, her name is Ingrid Bissu, is his wife.
Oh.
So maybe she was inspired by his graphic novel or something. But yeah, there's definitely, I feel like, way too many. Sounds like very similar in order for it to not be at least like somewhat inspired by that graphic novel.
Yeah, I think it also said too that the main character of that, he's trying to like find out more about his past. I'm like,
come on now.
What? And then I was reading reviews of the graphic novel on Goodreads, and somebody was saying that like the beginning of it has the feel of like the Saw movies, because it's like a person with like cancer who's like doing stuff, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
But he wrote the Saw movies, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
he directed. I don't know if he wrote them, but he directed them.
He directed them. Yeah. So they said that they could like see that in there, kind of, and I was like, that's interesting.
Yeah. I don't know why he wouldn't just own up to the fact that like his own work inspired more of his own work. But
yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting. I guess this is more of a criticism, but I noticed that we were like 15 to 20 minutes into the movie, and I still didn't really know what was going on. Like, I didn't really know much about the characters. I didn't know, like, I don't know, I just didn't have any sort of inclination as to where the story was going. Which is, like, I guess it's kind of a critique, but at the same time, I feel like it really was it was something that stood out to me in watching the movie, and I was just like confused about, you know?
I thought that the actress for Maddie, which is Annabelle Wallis, looks a lot like Kobe Smulders, who plays Robin Scherbatsky in How I Met Your Mother.
Yeah, she does look like her.
And I was like, what the fuck?
I feel like Kobe Smulders, like, her face is a little bit thinner and, like, maybe a little bit longer. But they do look alike.
I looked up on Google. I typed in both their names, and then, like, pictures of them came up, not, like, together, but, like, one and then, like, another one. And I was, like, looking between them, and I'm like, yeah, just, like, I guess Annabelle Wallis usually has blonde hair. At least from the pictures that it was pulling up when I typed in her name.
Yeah.
But I was like, man, just with her brown hair, and, like, they have that same, like, look and, like, those, like, eyes, like, the same, like, eye shape that's, like, kind of, like, I don't know.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's a good point. I also noticed that the music sometimes, just, like, the way that it, like, built up and then kind of like released in certain ways, it reminded me a lot of like classic horror like movie scores, I guess. I feel like there was a few moments particularly because I think the music changed in style like in different scenes. But I think it was mostly the stuff that took place like in her house that was using like a score that just really reminded me of like classic horror movies. Like it was a very like, I don't even know how to describe it, just particular kind of sound. I feel like that when I usually hear that kind of sound, I think of like a classic horror movie.
This movie, I feel like it had a lot of action sequences, like particularly when like Gabriel was on screen, like during the chase scene, and also when Gabriel was like attacking the cops, and it looked like Matrix.
Yeah. That's another thing too, is going back to like the way that the intro reminded us of like a TV show. I feel like the cop related stuff in this movie and like the crime solving aspect of it really reminded me of like a Law and Order or a CSI type of show, which like was even more confusing to me because I feel like it shifted the tone of the movie in a weird way. But yeah, there was like a lot of like action scenes where they're like, it kind of plays out as like them trying to solve, a crimes, like them trying to solve crimes. So then they're chasing this killer, and it has more so to do with like that aspect of it than Maddie's history with like being adopted and whatnot. So I feel like it was kind of weird in that sense. It changed tone like back and forth a few times.
I have that also. Related, but not the exact one that you're saying in my didn't like section. So
yeah. So Gabriel's voice reminded me of Jigsaw's voice in Saw.
Oh yeah.
Like that weird, like deep, gravelly, kind of distorted voice. And then, which makes sense because, like we said earlier, James Wan directed Saw. So I thought that was kind of funny. I also wrote in my notes at one point, because we were talking about all the, like, fight and, like, action scenes, right? Gabriel really does love an arm breaking. He, like, broke, like, I don't know how many people's arms. Many. I was like, is that supposed to mean something? Because that was, like, his, like, go-to move was, like, breaking people's arms. So I thought that was kind of funny.
I feel like they used the same little prosthetic thing to show the fake bone on everyone, because it was always like right here, and it was always like this little bit of bone sticking
maybe they
out.
Had like, maybe they had like a surplus of prosthetics and they're like, oh okay, well we might as well use them.
Might as well just break arms a lot.
Yeah, so I thought that was kind of funny.
I just thought it was kind of funny that, and also gross, that the lady, I forgot her name, starts with an R, the guy cop's partner.
Oof, I don't remember.
Oh, I don't remember her name. I know it started with an R. She was eating a lollipop in the morgue, or not morgue, the dissection room, the room where they figure out what's wrong with the body.
Yeah.
And I was like, ugh.
Yeah, it's pretty nasty.
It reminds me too of like when you're in like high school or when you're in college and you're doing a chemistry lab, they tell you like don't have any food items in here because there's like chemicals, and if you're like eating stuff, the chemicals in the air is gonna like go into your food and you're gonna eat it.
That's bad. So I have a question for you.
Oh really?
Yeah, so we talked about the whole phone call situation, right? And that's kind of how Gabriel would communicate with Maddie and whatnot. So they have the scene where they're doing like the interrogation of Maddie when they think that she's the one that kidnapped that lady who turned out to be her biological mom. But she gets a phone call from Gabriel, right? So how did she do that?
I feel like they were trying to do too much with Gabriel.
Yeah.
That they were trying to make it like paranormal and then like trying to be like, well, it's not paranormal. It's actually he's really in there and he's a real physical thing. But they like didn't think about the consequences of what that means for like the rest of the movie. Like I don't understand why he has like psychic powers and is able to like manipulate electricity and like make phone calls and stuff. Like it doesn't really make any sense. And like is he actually like a devil, or is he like, or a demon, or is he's just something in
her
head, not like in her head like fake, but like in her head like literally like fucking Voldemort back there. So I don't know, man. I didn't think it made sense.
It didn't, and it also is reminiscent of The Ring in that sense, because Samara started out as something that was like paranormal, But then it turned out that she was real, and she had this sort of backstory where she was experimented on, blah, blah, blah. And then at the end, she still, like, goes back to being somewhat paranormal. And like you said, it has all those abilities that just don't really make sense with the rest of the story. So, I mean, I'm with you on that. My question was more so just to, like, bring up the point that some shit didn't add up, you know?
At the beginning, when they're in the hospital facility thing, the camera, like, really wanted you to see that who you think at that point is Gabriel. I guess it is Gabriel, but you see that Gabriel's wearing, like, purple socks with, like, pandas on them.
Yeah.
And I feel like they were trying to show us that, like, these are, like, typically girly socks.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, I think that was supposed to be, like, sort of, like, in a way, like, giving us a clue.
Yeah.
That Gabriel's on the back of Maddie's.
Mm-hmm.
Or Gabriel and Maddie are connected.
Yeah, definitely.
And then they had, like, a theme. Not theme. Yeah, I guess theme. I don't know. Throughout where, like, a lot of the time when Gabriel would take over and would go to kill people, red light would appear. So there was, like, the red light in the hospital. There was a red light when he was killing the doctor in that hotel room from the light on the other hotel.
Yeah.
And then there was also a red light again when you see Gabriel take over Maddie and he goes into the jail to kill people, and there's, like, a red light.
I will say that I noticed the red light thing, and I also thought it was pretty cool the way that they did, like, the transformation from, like, what she thought, like, where she was and what she was seeing when Gabriel was killing.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was a cool representation, I guess, of the fact that he was taking over her body. It reminded me a little bit of Insidious, I think, just because in Insidious there's, like, an astral projection situation going on. So I don't really quite remember if they show it in the same way that they show the fact that she's, like, sitting back and looking at Gabriel do all these things. But I think it's similar because, like, they see themselves, like, leave their body and and do whatever they need to do. You haven't seen Insidious, huh?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so.
It's pretty good. I think we could probably watch it for an episode.
Let us know if you want us to watch it. I read in one of those, like, fun facts that people think that when Maddie was in the hospital, when the cop is there and she says, "Oh yeah, she's been like this for 2 days. She won't eat anything. She won't talk."
Mm-hmm.
And the article I was reading said that they think that she was being taken over by Gabriel and, like, stuck in that, like, thing for 2 days, and she was just, like, thinking that she was living, doing whatever for 2 days, but he was, like, taking over or something.
So, Danielle,
Mm-hmm.
what did you like about this movie?
What did I like? I will say, first off, that I think that the acting was really good from Maddie and Gabriel. So, like we said before, Maddie is played by Annabelle Wallis, and then Gabriel is played by Marina Mazeppa. And I think that they both did a really good job, especially playing Gabriel and having to, like, run backwards and, like, do all these things, like, behind your back is, like, pretty crazy.
Right. So, something that I liked was the cinematography and the directing. I think that usually that's what, like, James Wan's movies are, like, pretty good at. I feel like the high production value really stands out. Like, obviously he's kind of a big shot now in, like, the horror genre, so I'm sure he has, like, huge budgets on his films. I specifically like the scene where we get, like, a bird's eye view from, like, the top of the house when she's running around. And then I thought about after the fact, I guess this maybe it could have gone in symbolism, but I think it's supposed to be, like, it's supposed to call back to the fact that she was like somewhat of a lab rat, I guess. Because she's like running around in her house, and we kind of get that view that you would get from like, you know, a mouse or a rat running in a little maze or whatever. So I thought that was pretty cool. I was like, I see the production value here. Like, there's, you know, at least there's that.
I was wondering. I wrote in my notes that I wrote it as it was a dollhouse overhead view, whatever. But I don't know how did they do that? Like, especially when it's on the lower floors, like they have to like do a rig with like the camera on the ceiling or something. Or
yeah, I mean, for the most part, sound stages don't have a ceiling. For that same reason, because they want to be able to access like the rafters, and like that's where all the lighting comes from and everything. So, yeah.
But it was I guess what you see on the outside doesn't necessarily.
Not at all.
Okay.
Also, if you think it's a lower floor, it's probably not. It's just ground floor. But it's built probably separately. Yeah, there's a lot of trickery going on with stuff like that.
Oh, I had also written down that there was really cool camera angles and shots and stuff. And I thought also another one that was cool was when they did the fan that was in the attic, and they took the camera and like tilted it like coming out of the fan, so it's like you were like the air coming out of the fan. So that was pretty cool. And then also when you see the shot of the one old guy doctor was going to go into his bed, and you're just like under the bed, and then you see his feet like right there, and then they go up, and then he turns off the light, and then it's just the red light from the window, and you're just like under the bed, and like,
you know, like Gabriel's coming.
Yeah,
he's coming.
That was really cool.
Speaking of that scene, I think the lighting in general, I really liked. It was very like moody, and it just really set the scene, I feel like. And that's another thing, like kind of going off of what I've already said about James Wan and his style of directing and everything. It's got a very like, I guess, unique and like defined visual style, which I think is really cool, because, you know, it kind of makes me think of like Hitchcock or something like that. Not to compare too much, because, you know, they're different, and I think definitely Hitchcock is like more highly regarded than James Wan, obviously, but I think they're similar in the sense that they have like their stamp, like their style that's like, or like Stanley Kubrick too. Like you watch a movie and you know that that's a Kubrick movie or that's a Hitchcock movie. I think that in his filmography, I think that James Wan is kind of like building up to that status. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I agree. Well, when we were watching this movie, I thought that like, just like you said, the way that it looked like the Conjuring movies.
Yeah. So I thought that once the entire premise was like finally laid out, and they like let us into what was actually going on, I did think it was like an interesting and like pretty unique, you know, storyline. I also really appreciated the fact that in like the James Wan universe, this was a standalone movie and not a prequel or a sequel or something like that. It was like completely standalone, an original script, maybe not an amazing script, but an original script with an original story. So I feel like that fact and like the premise itself is pretty good. It just wasn't executed the best way, but we'll get into that.
Yeah, I liked at the end how they like trick the audience into thinking that Sydney and the biological mom, die.
Yeah.
I was like, I turned to Paula when it happened in the movie, and I was like, what?
Wait, what? I thought she wasn't gonna die.
Yeah, I was like, what? Come on. And then like as I was writing the notes, wasn't expecting Sydney or the mom to die. Like as I was in the middle of writing it, then it like showed that they didn't actually die, and I was like, JK. So I thought that was cool.
Yeah. Speaking of the end too, I also like the way that it ended. And I was a little bit worried just from the way that the movie was unfolding that it was going to give us this like, I guess, aftermath of like Maddie post Gabriel, where she's like happy and like maybe she had a kid, and like this like unnecessary ending showing us like everything coming full circle. So I was afraid that was going to happen. I could definitely see the movie going that way. So I am glad that it ended, you know, I guess earlier than that, and they didn't show any of the aftermath of this whole situation, because I feel like it was already long enough of a movie, and for them to like tack that on, it definitely would have been like another minus on like in my book. But I do like the way that it ended. I thought it was like, okay, we're done telling this story. Like this was the end of it. So
yeah, I agree. Very clean ending. I was trying to think. I was like, man, if they keep going, they're gonna have to show us like she has to be held responsible for killing an entire fucking department of police officers. You can't just be like,
it was actually Gabriel.
The demon on the back of my head made me do it. You can't see him right now because he's asleep, but he did it.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, the reality of whatever happened after that would probably involve, you know, Maddie going to like a mental hospital or something like that. Which maybe that's why they stopped it where they did, because they didn't want to like make it an unrealistic resolution. So
I thought that this movie could have a reading of like Gabriel being like a symbolic representation of either PTSD or like a coping mechanism or something, because the way that he appears is after Maddie's piece of shit husband smashes her head on the wall. And I was like, damn. And then they're saying that he was present before when she was younger and she was having trouble like adjusting into a new family and stuff like that, and like going from living in a hospital to like having a normal life. So and then at the end too, when she like locks him up and she's like putting him in check, and she says like, oh, it's my mind, my body, my everything, and she's kind of like reclaiming herself and like saying like, I'm not gonna let this you know, take control of me. I'm gonna control it.
Right.
And
yeah, that's true. That's a good, I guess, like interpretation.
So Paula, what did you not like about this movie?
Well, I kind of already touched on this point earlier, but I really didn't like the fact that it took so long to get to where it was going. Granted, once it got to where it was going, it definitely picked up, and it made me like feel more engaged in the story. But it took them too long to get there. I felt for like the good first half or the first chunk of the movie that I couldn't really be like invested in Maddie as a main character. That I wasn't really like, the stakes just didn't seem that high. You know what I mean? Because there was no clear explanation about what was going on. So I get a reveal, obviously, like the Gabriel thing is somewhat of a reveal, because then we find out that it's actually her and her body's being taken over. But I feel like there was a missing piece or something in the first half of the movie where we're just seeing Maddie go through all these weird things, and then seeing all these people get killed, and then seeing like the CSI, you know, law and order cop aspect of it. All those things just weren't connecting well, and that made me like not really care. You know what I mean? So it wasn't until like the later half that I was like, okay, I get it now. But did you have to do all this in order to get to, you know, where it got? So that was like one of the first things that stood out to me, that I was like, you know, I don't really like that.
Like I said earlier, I feel like they're trying to do so much with Gabriel by making him like real, but also like some like non-physical like demon thing, that it made the vibe of the movie very flippy floppy. And I feel like the cop aspect also, now that you mention it, like added to that, because they were trying to go for like realistic and like physical, like, but especially with the chase scene and stuff like that, pulled it out of being paranormal or demonic or something. And then so it just kept on like pushing like back and forth, like, no, you should feel like this way about this movie, that it's like, you know, it's like not physical, it's not like actually something there,
like it's like demon related or something.
So it's like they kept on they kept on like going back and forth, and because of that, like I feel like some of the things didn't add up and stuff like that. I don't know. They were going between medical and monster versus like demon paranormal stuff. I like how when they were showing the street lamp in the beginning and then like a shadow of a person and then like the door opening and closing and Maddie like locking it and then it would just open. I feel like they were trying to like throw us off. Like, which is kind of
Yeah. I feel like maybe they felt the need to insert all of these like horror, like quote unquote horror elements in order to like draw in the audience or something, but I think it had the opposite effect. I feel like if they would have gotten to the core story faster, it would have been a much more engaging movie.
I feel like also they were doing some weird stuff with that Gabriel couldn't be in the light. Every time that's like why he would turn the lights off. And I don't understand like what they were doing with that. That made it seem like that
Was
one
he a
movie.
vampire?
Oh yeah, that one movie where there's like mannequins that like move in the night.
Yeah.
And they have to turn all the lights off and then like they had to keep a light on. I don't know. It seemed like they were going with that. I don't know if maybe because they don't want you to know that it's like Maddie on the backside of him or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
The last thing that I thought that didn't make sense was that in the beginning, Maddie is attacked by Gabriel. What? She runs up the stairs from him, but
Yeah.
I don't.
Maybe she was, I don't know. She was imagining it, I guess.
I guess maybe in that weird like state where they were both able to be like present, like in the end when they were both able to like face each other.
Yeah.
Maybe it was something like that, but it seemed like it was happening in a real time, real location or something. Not that weird like dissolving away.
Yeah.
Mental thing.
Right.
So I don't know. I was like,
Yeah, that's kind of funny. I don't know.
Shit don't add up.
She's like punching the back of her head or something. So, I'm sure you'll agree with me on this one. There were some really silly moments that I think were not meant to be silly. And I feel like that kind of stuff, like obviously like comedy and horror, great, love it. It's like a really good, I feel like it's a really good mix because it's like a little bit of a juxtaposition of like being really scared and then laughing. Like it's a release, right? So it's a good thing. But when you get to a movie that has like comedic moments that aren't meant to be comedic, I feel like that's when you get to a place that is like not good.
Yeah.
Because for me personally, it like takes me out of the story. Like I don't know. I think I don't know if it happens too much in his other movies, but in this movie specifically, I feel like James Wan like turns up the drama to a place where it kind of like goes into funny, you know? Like it's so dramatic that it's funny.
It's cheesy.
It's cheesy, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's cheesy. It's just like too much. And I did think that there were some like purposeful like comedic moments, specifically with the second cop, the lady cop, where that were supposed to be funny, but those weren't funny, and those were the ones that were supposed to be funny. So it was just kind of like a weird combination of like extreme dramatic scenes that just didn't, I think, just didn't play out the way that they were intended to, and just were funny when they weren't supposed to be funny.
Yes.
So it was just kind of weird. Little too much, cheese. Because I do like some cheesiness in horror movies, but I feel like that was the wrong kind of cheese. That was a rotten cheese. I don't like it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that was like specifically happened a lot more in the beginning of the movie. I feel like the beginning of the movie had a different feel to it versus like later on when they actually like start revealing more information. But in the beginning, I think also what made some of those scenes really cheesy is some of the music choices that they chose. I feel like in the beginning half of the movie, the music did not add up, did not fit with what was going on. Especially the particular scene that I'm thinking of is when Maddie reveals to Sydney that she's adopted, the music gets so loud, and it's not even like the typical like horror movie music that you would expect. It's like this weird, I don't even know, 80s like beep boop music. I don't know. It was like really dumb. It didn't fit the tone.
And they do like a zoom into like her face or something.
Yeah,
it was just
it ruined the moment. I literally wrote like the music ruined this moment.
Yeah, it was just, that's a good example of one of those like really dramatic moments that were meant to be shocking but ended up just being funny because they were just not
handled proper.
Or done well or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I think that this is one thing that I didn't like that we differ in. So I thought the acting wasn't that great.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think, obviously I don't want to discredit, like, the actress. I think that she's probably a really good actress with a really good career, so I don't want to say that, like, she's a shit actress, because that's not my opinion. But I do think that in this movie particularly, I just wasn't buying her character, if that makes sense. Like, and I don't even know if it has more to do with, like, the script, or maybe even the direction. Like, maybe she was being directed to do certain things or act a certain way. But I didn't buy her character. Her character wasn't, like, believable or relatable. I feel like usually, especially in horror movies, a main character is supposed to be that, like, emotional anchor, right? It's supposed to be the person that you really care about and that you really root for and that you say, God, I hope they make it through, you know, X, Y, and Z fucking demonic possession or whatever. And I feel like whatever was going on with her, either as an actress or with Maddie as a character, wasn't holding that weight for me. I wasn't, like, totally emotionally invested in her character. And, you know what, it could have, like I said, it could have been a directing thing, it could have been a script thing. It could have also been all of the elements in the movie around Maddie's character that just didn't make it so that it was, you know, as successful of a connection, because of those goofy moments or because of whatever sort of things like that we already criticized, right? So I feel like maybe it was all those things combined that made it so that Maddie wasn't as much of an emotional anchor, in my opinion. So I don't know. I feel like it was kind of lacking in that sense. I feel like I could have really, had this movie been done a little bit differently, or maybe had her performance been a little bit different, I would have really, like, bought into her character, especially given the fact that she is, like, somebody who was in an abusive marriage and who had been going through, like, apparently several miscarriages. Like, you know, there's stuff there to kind of hold on to and to, like, relate to, but maybe it was just not working with like her performance or the setting that she was in. I don't know, I just wasn't buying it.
Okay. Now that you mention it that way, I was thinking of, like, the more, like, surface level acting, I guess, or performance of just, like, the, like, looking scared and, like, yelling and, like, that kind of stuff. But, like, when you mention that now, I can kind of see that I think I was caring more about the sister Sydney surviving rather than her. And I think part of what has to do with that is that Maddie is very sort of, like, confused all the time and, like, doesn't, like, and very, I don't know, I feel like she doesn't have any opinion on anything.
Yeah, I think she's one note. She's, like, just always scared, and that's pretty much it.
Yeah, so I feel like you said, that they didn't give her enough dialogue to, like, show off that she was dealing with things. I feel like they kind of made up for it in the end with her being like, you know, oh, it's like, my bond with you, sister, is, like, the strongest thing. Like, it's good enough for me, and I should have realized it all along, and, like, I'm taking over my life and stuff. I feel like that kind of makes up a little bit at the end, but, like, yeah, throughout she doesn't really do much. She's just always confused or scared or just, like, there.
So the last thing that I didn't like was the dialogue. I don't think, like, it was overall really bad. I think there were really bad moments. It was, like, really expository in a way that like, wasn't natural, and it made the movie, like, less believable, I guess. So, for example, in the beginning, when we see Maddie with her husband, with her piece of shit husband, and she gets home and he's watching TV or something, and then they get into this fight, and he's like, maybe you need to stop getting pregnant, or like, how many kids am I gonna have to watch die inside your body, or something like that. Like, it was just very like,
robot.
let me tell you what happened instead of showing you what happened, you know, like, or I don't know, it could have been done in like so many other different, more creative ways. Like, they could have told us a little bit about Maddie's backstory and her marriage and her like failed pregnancies and stuff like that, without having to have him literally say like, how many babies am I gonna have to watch die, or something like that. It was just like, to me, it was just like overly, expository in a way that I just didn't really like. So I feel like there was little bits here and there sprinkled throughout the movie that were similar to that. They were like more about telling you about what happened so that you kind of just have that piece of information in order to move forward with the narrative, instead of taking a more creative approach to like show you how something happened or why it happened, So I feel like that was, something that I didn't really like. So Danielle, what did you rate this movie?
I gave this movie a 7.4 out of 10 shrimpy back of the head Voldemorts.
Shrimpy?
He looked like a little shrimpy thing with his little arms that were hanging off.
That's funny.
Right?
Yeah, you kind of did.
So Paola, what did you rate this movie?
So I'm rating this movie a 6.5 out of 10 morgue lollipops.
Yummy.
Tastes like morgue. Tastes like dead body.
Maybe you'll get the toe jingle flavor.
So that's it for today's episode. We hope you guys enjoyed it. If you've seen this movie, let us know what you thought in the comments. If you have any comments or questions or movie suggestions, you can email us at danielleandpaula@gmail.com.
And then if you want to follow us on social media, we have Instagram, and our handle is hysterrifiedpodcast. We like to post little updates on there and stuff like that. And then we also have a Twitter, and our Twitter is hysterrifiedpod. And also we post some stuff on there every once in a while.
Yeah.
Interact with you guys on there. And then if you're listening on the Apple Podcast app, go ahead and leave us a rating and a review. We appreciate it very much.
So thank you for listening or watching, and we will see you on our next episode. Bye.
Bye.